Today, we are talking about one of the most important ideas in all of physics, simple harmonic motion. Now, I know that sounds super technical, but trust me, by the end of this, you'll see it's actually a simple, beautiful rhythm that's happening all around you all the time.
So think about this for a second. You've got a vibrating guitar string, right? Then you've got a massive skyscraper swaying in the wind, and then the orbit of our entire planet. What on earth could possibly connect these three things? They seem completely random, but they're not. They all share a secret language.
And that secret, that connection, it's all about rhythm, a kind of universal beat that nature just seems to love. It's a pattern that repeats itself over and over, from the tiniest particles to the biggest structures in the cosmos. The big secret is that they all oscillate. They move back and forth, up and down, around and around, but they do it in a predictable, repeating pattern, a rhythm. And physicists, of course, have a special name for the most perfect, purest version of this rhythm.
Okay, so to really get a grip on how this works in the messy, real world, physicists always start with a perfect, ideal model. It's like a blueprint for how things would move if there was no friction, no air getting in the way, nothing to slow it down.
And that perfect blueprint has a name, simple harmonic motion, or just SHM for short. Now, the textbook definition is a bit of a mouthful. The restoring force is directly proportional to the displacement. Yeah, okay, let's unpack what that actually means. Forget the jargon. It's actually super intuitive. Just picture a rubber band. The further you stretch it away from its normal, relaxed position, the harder it yanks back, right? It's always trying to get back to the middle. That pull is the restoring force. More stretch equals more pull. That's all it is. So, to describe this perfectly, we use the language of math. But don't worry about the equation itself. Let's just look at the ingredients. First, you've got A for amplitude. That's just how far you stretch it, the maximum distance from the center. Then, the cosine function gives you that smooth, wavy back and forth pattern. And finally, that little omega symbol just tells you how fast the whole thing is oscillating. Put them all together and boom, you can predict exactly where that object will be at any given moment. And what's so cool is how all of this is connected. Once you know its position, you can figure out its velocity, how fast it's moving. And from its velocity, you can figure out its acceleration. The key thing to notice is that it's moving fastest right as it zips through the center, its resting point, and it slows down and actually stops for a split second at the very edges of its motion before turning back.
All right, enough with the theory. Let's see this in action, with probably the most classic, most elegant example there is, the good old pendulum.
You know, for small swings, a pendulum is about as close to perfect simple harmonic motion as you can get. Its rhythm is so incredibly reliable and predictable that for hundreds of years, the pendulum was the heart of the most accurate clocks on the planet. It literally set the rhythm of our lives. So what actually controls that tick-tock? What determines the period, the time it takes for one full swing back and forth? Well, it turns out it's shockingly simple. It really just comes down to two things. L, the length of the string, and G, the pull of gravity. That's it. Make the string longer, the swing gets slower. Stronger gravity, the swing gets faster. But here's the part that really blows people's minds. It's what doesn't matter. The weight at the end? Totally irrelevant. A feather would swing at the same rate as a bowling ball. And as long as the swings are pretty small, it doesn't even matter how far back you pull it. The time it takes to complete one swing stays exactly the same. Wild, right?
Okay, but we all know that in the real world, things don't swing forever. Our perfect little bubble has to meet reality. And reality, well, it has a way of making things just fade away.
So, let's put them side by side. In our perfect ideal world of SHM, the swing is always the same size, it goes on forever, and no energy is ever lost. But then you step into reality and you get damped motion. The swings get smaller and smaller. The motion dies out, and that's all because energy is being lost to stuff like friction and air resistance. This process is called damping. You can think of it as the universe's built-in brake pedal. Every time a guitar string vibrates, it's pushing air molecules out of the way. And with every single push, it loses a tiny, tiny bit of energy until it eventually just goes silent. That's damping. And yeah, you guessed it, we can describe this with math too. We just take our original, beautiful equation for perfect motion, and we add something called an exponential decay factor. All that really means is we've built a fade out right into the math. The rhythm now has an expiration date. But what if we don't want the motion to fade out? What if we want to fight back against damping?
What if we want to push the system not just to keep going, but to its absolute limit?
Well, that's where forced oscillations come into play. And it's exactly what it sounds like. We apply an outside push over and over to add energy back into the system. The best example is just pushing someone on a swing. With every push, you're fighting against friction and keeping the motion going.
Now this leads us to one of the most important ideas in all of physics. See, everything that can oscillate, a swing, a wine glass, a bridge, an atom, has what's called a natural frequency. It's the specific rhythm that it wants to vibrate at if you just give it a little tap and leave it alone.
So, what happens when the frequency of your pushing perfectly matches that natural frequency? Well, you get something incredible, a phenomenon called resonance. All the energy you're adding starts to build up, and the amplitude, the size of the swings, gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Just look at this. This chart says it all. If your timing's off, a little too slow, a little too fast, you get a little bit of movement, but not much. But when you hit that natural frequency, that perfect sweet spot, bam! The amplitude shoots through the roof. You're pushing in perfect sync with the system, and the effect is gigantic.
And this is not just some neat physics trick. This is everywhere. Resonance is literally how your radio tuner picks one single station out of the air. It's why soldiers are famously ordered to break step and just walk normally when crossing a bridge, so their rhythmic marching doesn't match the bridge's natural frequency and tear it apart. And yes, it is exactly how an opera singer can hit the perfect note to match the natural frequency of a crystal glass and shatter it with nothing but the power of their voice.
So we'll leave you with this idea. We started with a simple, perfect back-and-forth motion, and we ended with a force that can build technologies and bring down structures. So if everything around you, the chair you're sitting on, the building you're in, the very atoms that make you up, has its own secret rhythm, what happens when you learn how to match it?